All right, welcome back, everybody. We are now at the 1:30 item of our meeting plan. There's a 5-step process in this section for the next 35 minutes or so. That's so funny. Math doesn't quite work out, but we'll figure it out. So what we're going to do, first step is we're going to break you up into your buddies. So Sarah and Suzanne, and then Cody and Claudette. And we're going to put Shannon in with Cody and Claudette, and Joanne's going to go with Sarah and Suzanne. We're just mostly there for support and typing, probably. So Sarah and Suzanne, and then Cody and Claudette, you're going to choose one person's problem to work. So first thing, you have to duke it out, rock, scissors, paper, or however you want to do it. Choose one person's problem to work on. The other person serves as the buddy or the facilitator. And the facilitator's job is just to ask all the questions, right? Just like you saw Shannon and I do. What you're going to do is take about 12 minutes. Well, I guess that's, I see what's the deal. It's going to require you to probably about 2 minutes or so to get your act together. And then, so do a little self-regulation. You're gonna empathy interview the person for about 12 minutes, and then take the last couple of minutes before the timer runs out to sort. There's something that Shannon and I forgot to do, or we didn't quite get to it last time. So actually, I'm going to add 15, 17. I'm going to add some time to the clock. So what you're going to see when you get into the room is you're going to see the clock is going to give you 16 minutes plus 1. So total running time is 17 minutes, which essentially allows you to duke it out for 2 minutes, get yourself all situated, 12 minutes to empathy interview, and 3 minutes roughly to sort. So that's your process. And then the computer will automatically suck you back into the big room, and then we'll just see where we are. Any questions?
That sounds great.
Here we go.
Joanne, maybe this is probably clear, but just in case, there's a link in everybody's design at this step to your template.
Yeah, so make sure you hit the link on the design. Thank you. Okay. Here we go. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I hope the other room had as much of a delightful time empathy interviewing our person as we did. I can get myself remember. I always lose the meeting design. I've got too many darn windows. We are now at the step 5 of our process, where we're going to debrief where we are. Cody, Claudette, Shannon, you want to go first? You want us to go first?
We can go first, sure. Let me share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had, let me make this bigger. You want me to give the, I'm afraid I'm going to talk too long, so just, you want me to give the highlights?
Highlights, walk us through your journey.
Okay. All right, so we chose a problem that Claudette is facing, which is she doesn't know if she should buy an HBO Now subscription for one show that she really wants to watch.
Yes.
Yes, and she, so as we unpacked the situation and Cody was empathy interviewing Claudette, a couple of what we started with was that it was for Claudette, it's a feeling like she's not sure she should spend the money, that there's a sense of guilt for her about spending the money on herself. We then kind of went into a conversation around, so there's a lot of that stuff in the self bucket. Went into a conversation about how she feels like there's a lot of competing priorities for her time and her money. And we got into a little bit of a circular conversation at that point, just in terms of that's where Claudette even self-described that she felt a little stuck. And then, but we kept going deeper to say, so what's the problem with that? And uncovered that Claudette is a single mom, and which we didn't know, so we appreciate learning that about her. That as a single mom, and this is where it started to get into sort of the real, like the deeper part of the problem, is that there's nobody to help her prioritize herself. So unless she does it, nobody else will, which then led us into the more systemic problem, which is that as women, we're taught that our value comes from how much we care for others, as opposed to how much we care for ourselves. So it was at that point that we felt like we had gotten to a place in the tree and the roots that we're not able to solve.
Mm-hmm. Good. So you're sort of merging the change field and the situation while you were exploring. Great. We have a little bit of time, so I'm curious from each of the three of you before we move to our other group. Could each of you just do a quick round of counsel, just how that experience felt for each of you, just unpacking the situation with with Claudette, and maybe I'll start with Claudette since she was in the hot seat.
Yeah, so there came a point we were going through the questions, and most of it centered around me feeling limited and finances limited in time, with competing interests in my time and money and how it should be spent. And it kept going around in circles, like Shannon said, and until Cody stopped for a sec, like we took a pause, and she was like, should we ask some more questions? And that pause kind of gave me a minute to think a little bit deeper and switch gears and refocus and get out of that loop I was in. And it was almost like a shift. It went from being surface level, where I was like not emotionally in it, to becoming really emotional when I started talking about being a single mom and stuff. So that was like a root, really the roots.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudette. Cody and Shannon, just briefly how that experience went for you.
Yeah, when I was thinking through it, and when Claudette did open up, and thank you for trusting us with your life, I feel like this, if you're doing this method with a team, there has to be that trust, or else it seems like it will not get to the like ground level work that you want to get to make the change. And so I could see this being like a way to build trust, but then also allow for vulnerability within a team to problem solve.
Thank you.
Nice observation. My largest reflection is just what can happen when we create space for somebody to really think and speak.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I will just reflect back to the three of you and to the full group. All we did was just scratch the surface on the situation. We haven't even identified the change yet. And what you're experiencing now is this profound shift and actually community co-creation of like actually attempting to at least identifying a problem together. So thank you for that reflection. Let's go ahead and turn to our other group. I'm not going to share my screen because we can all hop onto the document. So you can stop sharing your screen, Shan. So I would invite you to join Sarah, Suzanne, and Joanne on the document. Suzanne or Sarah, you want to navigate, like do some high level orienting, just like a couple minutes as to our process, our journey?
Yeah, so I'd just give you the context of the problem, I guess.
Yeah, but you can start with the presenting issue and then a little bit of Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so we decided to work on my problem. I have two sets of in-laws. My husband's parents are divorced, so I have his mom and then his dad and stepmom. They both would like to stop social distancing and spend time with us. The sort of like prescient issue is that Saturday is my daughter's 3rd birthday. So they both requested to hang out with us this weekend. We're not ready to stop social distancing. And then sort of the wider, so that's like one kind of system context. And then the wider, some other historical context of that is that they are not friends. So whatever activities we do would have to be separate. So like something with just his mom and then something with just his dad and stepmom. So anyway, so we're trying to navigate setting some boundaries around the pandemic and also navigate crazy in-laws.
Thank you, Sarah. Suzanne, you want to talk a little bit about just the process of us sorting and just give a little bit more context?
Sure. I guess, you know, we went through, I have to admit, like, I wasn't as comfortable as I probably should have been, but we went through and kind of talked about the situation at hand, kind of understanding different perspectives, some of the historical issues that might exist in the relationship, that it wasn't just maybe about this birthday party, but also some ongoing challenges that they have to navigate. And so what else should I highlight here, Joanne?
So we just essentially, there was those 4 questions. What's going on? How seriously, you know, what's your perspective? What else is going on? And we just sort of danced. We just did a lot of just throwing stuff on the wall. Talk about the process of how we sorted, how we got to the self-other system, because I think how we did this was kind of interesting. So talk about.
Yeah, so I guess that is the, so in this case, in this instance, Sarah felt really united with her sort of the core family, her family unit of 4. And so that was the self, her husband and her 2 children and herself. And then others were the in-laws as a conglomerate. And then the system we kind of saw as, I guess, like the family system, the extended family system as the other, I'm sorry, the system was the extended family system, if that makes sense. Like they've been operating in sort of this space where they can't be all together for quite some time. So that has its sort of like legacy. And then the other bit of system is just sort of the challenges with like the public health and knowing what's going on. So they're operating with like not a lot of information, as we all are.
Cool, thanks, lovely. That was nicely done. What I really appreciate about this is that we took the 3 framing and we made our own interpretation of self-other system. So in this case, Sarah was really clear. Self is the 4 of us. And that's our basic, right? Which I thought was so cool. Other is clearly the in-laws, and system are the historical antecedents. So that felt really organic and genuine. So let me ask Sarah, since she was in the hot seat, what was your experience in unpacking this situation thus far?
It was good. I didn't feel like, I mean, because it is, I think I was trying to tell you guys this, like, as we were sort of switching back and forth, but I mean, this has been a situation, basic situation, sans pandemic, for the entirety of our relationship. We've been together for 15 years, so this is just the way it is, and it's evolving. It's not always easy, and we're not always on the same team, but right now we are, and that feels good. I feel like I've got the perspective to approach it with a lot of humor, which is helpful, but it's also a bit of like a defensive thing too. Like it helps me not feel so like overwhelmed and emotional about it, because it can be frustrating and stressful for all of us. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But it's good. You guys did a good job.
Thank you. Suzanne, how'd that feel? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is nice to kind of think about sort of the complexity of our relationships and the ability that that you can have that family unit, like just taking in more context is really nice, that it's not as, I guess, as like granular. It doesn't have to be as granular. So it felt good.
And I would say my experience is I love the sorted data. Like it takes that whole narrative thing and it just makes it all nice, because you can start seeing like, oh, this is the self stuff, right? And this is the. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the next thing we're going to do, even though we feel like we've already started untangling our ball of yarn a little bit, we're going to get even better. As we segue into the next section and identify the change, does the Claudette, Cody, group have any questions or observations for the Sarah Suzanne group? And that includes you too, Shannon.
My observation would be that I also appreciate, and we talked a little bit about this in our group, but that there's the beauty of the self-other system structure is its flexibility.
Yeah.
And so to use your creative license to decide what is self and what is other and what is system.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Cody, any thoughts about Suzanne and Sarah's sitch?
It's just kind of timely having to deal with in-laws.
I know, right?
Relatable.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Suzanne and Sarah, any thoughts or comments about Claudette's scope? Reflections, questions?
I mean, my first thought, honestly, is that I'm going to share my HBO Now subscription with you. I will send you my login, so you'll be set. I don't mean to like jump the gun and solve your problem, but
Yes, problem solved. Okay, we can go.
Yeah.
I'll go home now. No.
no, but you deserve to have TV shows at times yourself. That was my initial thought, I guess I should say, was empathy. And like, I totally feel that as a mom. And I can't even imagine how much more that would feel like as a single mom. So yes, you deserve that TV show, woman.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm glad you got to pause and see like that a deeper reflection of like, this is, you know, it's not just about the HBO subscription, you know, so that was really nice. And as Sierra said, a lot of empathy for everything that you're juggling. You're doing a great job.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah. And that actually is the perfect segue to the next section. So now what we're going to do is go through that process. I've put more time on the clock. I think it's 14 minutes plus 1 now. So now we're going to go back and we're going to go through the process. So if you look at your template, so in the first row, you can either, each of us can start with a draft statement. Probably because of time, just start with that what draft problem statement, and then genuinely start working the problem with the why is it a problem, why is it a problem, why is it a problem, then switch what causes that to be a problem. So Shannon and I will help sort of heavily facilitate that. And then just see if you can come up with a sort of an upgraded problem statement at the end of the time. So again, watch your time carefully. And then the thing will suck us back into the big room, and then we'll do this interesting thing that I really appreciate, which is that oftentimes when you flip the thingy back into an intent, it doesn't, like grammatically, there's something wrong. It just doesn't quite sound right. So there's often an iterative process of going from intent back to problem statement, back to intent, but like kind of back and forth until we get to this. So we'll just see where we end up there, and we'll spend 5 minutes apiece doing that. So with that, any questions before? Look at that, we're right on time. How'd that
15
happen?
minutes, Tracy? 15? 15 minutes?
Yeah, 15 minutes. Yep. So it'll be 14 plus that 1 extra buffer minute. No questions? All right. Let's see if this works.
Now we're back.
Yeah, it's not easy asking for help or getting empathy, sympathy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I'm a strong Black woman. I can do it all. I don't need any empathy, you know. But then I have to remember, it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes.
And you're still strong, Claudette. You're still a strong Black woman, even when you ask for help.
Yeah, yeah,
They're not mutually exclusive, right?
very true.
Yeah.
Hi guys, welcome back. Let's see. All right, can we have HBO back? Or perhaps a different problem statement altogether.
Very different.
Oh, good. Goody. I think we don't need to screen share. I think we can just look at our thing. So, let's go ahead and Just do a quick walkthrough of where you started and where you ended. And then we'll go to intensity.
You want me to do that, or you want to? Okay.
Whatever.
Claudette, you want to share your journey? Why don't you share it?
Sure. So the original change statement was, I don't know how to balance perceived responsibilities with my desires. And so we went through the why is that a problem? And, you know, I don't know how to take care of self or ask for help. And adding the ask for help was, you know, when Sarah was like, oh, I'll help you out. I was like, I could ask for help. I think then we went to what causes this problem, and we pulled from the systemic problem of, as women, we are taught to be valued based on how we care for others more than we care for ourselves. And so from that, you know, looking at that on paper and how I could explain what the issue was, I was like, well, I have the tools and I have the self-awareness. It's right there on the paper. So why aren't they connecting?
Wow.
So then it changed to, I am not using the tools and self-awareness I do have to balance my responsibilities with my desires. So going from, I don't know how, was I didn't feel I had the power or the control, to I am not using the tools and self-awareness to a point of I do have control over the issue, and which eliminated a lot of the anxiety, because it felt like I was going from, I don't know what's going on, to actually I do know what's going on. It's right there on paper. I just now, you know, I'm not using what I have available. And so through that, then we changed it to an intent. So I can't remember how you all said you changed it from the I am not to the, what is that called again?
Well, it's just the forward facing.
Yeah.
It's
Forward facing. So I changed it to forward. So Shannon changed it to forward facing. So I'm not using the tools and self-awareness. I do have to balance my responsibilities with my desires. To the intent is to use the tools and self-awareness I do have to balance my responsibilities with my desires.
Wow. That was perfect.
Yeah, all I could say was wow. Wow.
So let me ask you, Claudette, does that feel like the problem and the intent, the change that you seek to make?
Yeah, and we talked about that too. Cody was like, you know, the HBO Now was just a leaf on the tree. So whether I got it, I would feel guilty if I got it. And if I didn't get it, I would feel resentful. That's what Shannon said. But getting to the root of the issue was, I have these tools and self-awareness to make any decision regarding
I know,
that.
it's so inspirational.
I know, it's amazing.
That's amazing.
Right.
Thank you. In the spirit of time, let's do this. Let's do the other group, and then we'll do a quick round of council just to debrief how the whole experience went. All right. Sarah Suzanne, walk us through our journey.
Sure. Do you want me to, I guess I can do it since Claudette did hers.
Yeah, start with the draft problem statement.
So our draft statement was that we are seeking a way to feel safe while visiting family during the pandemic / practicing social distancing. And when we got into sort of the why is that a problem or what causes that problem, I mean, we went down one way, which is sort of a dead end, which is that there's a pandemic and we don't want anybody we love to get sick and die. And I mean, there's not a whole lot further you can go with that. The causing there is that, but then there's the other side of it, is that they want to stop these safety measures that are in place to prevent sickness and perhaps death. So there are kind of two causes. One is that I'm not going to develop a vaccine for the virus between now and Saturday, which is my daughter's birthday, nor is anybody else. And then also our in-laws have different or unknown standards for social distancing that don't match with ours. But so as we walked, like as we went through it, you know, we don't necessarily trust that they would take the same measures that we are taking or do the same things that we're doing. And that they've made it clear they are over social distancing. We don't really know why in general, but we do know the root of that is that they love the grandkids, they love us, they miss all of us, and that's true on both sides. Like there's empathy, I think, for that desire. So we, you can see sort of an evolution of the problem statement here. Where we ended up was the problem we're trying to solve is that we don't know how to balance these competing desires of connection and safety among our family members, among our extended family members.
Nice.
Thank you, Sarah. And if we were to flip it in the positive, what would you say that the intent statement would be? Would it just simply be to know how?
Yeah, to know how to do that, how to balance those two things. Or I think I might even go back to like that, the first problem statement is to, I don't know, to honor those competing differences, because it may not be something that's solvable for everybody.
Yeah.
So, because what I'm considering a problem statement may not be a problem statement for either of those two parties.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna, oops.
I just got the original one down.
Yeah, no, it's great. So then, yeah, so let's go ahead and flip that back to the problem statement. Just to double check to, we don't know how. Right, so that's our fidelity check, is that we really, it's really about the honoring of, may not be a balance, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that we do, so there are kind of a couple of things here. Like we do need to balance that desire for connection and safety for ourselves. And we have to decide what that looks like.
Really, the problem we're trying to solve is the honoring of everyone's love for
But yeah, like validating what they're doing and making them, helping them. I mean, I can't make them feel anything, but hopefully getting to a place where we all feel like we're being heard would be ideal.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the outcome we all desire.
Okay. Let us, let's do a really quick, just council round robin, just how that experience felt. Why don't we start with the Cody Shannon group, Claudette group first.
To me, it felt meaningful. Like it dissects a problem that seems like small almost, and you're like, oh, well, if I'm going to spend the time wanting to solve the problem, let's solve it for a long period of time. Like it just seems meaningful.
Thanks, Cody.
And intentional.
Shannon, Claudette?
Yeah, I felt it was very much the unraveling of the walking through the fog and then just trying to figure out where you are and trying to figure out what direction to go in. And it provides a lot of direction.
Cool.
Sorry, Claudette, when you're done, yeah. I had one other.
Yeah, I'm done.
We talked about how it felt therapeutic to go through this.
It did. It felt the not knowing to knowing.
Yeah, good.
Was very emotional and therapeutic. Yeah.
Shannon?
I would summarize to say it felt empowering.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Sarah, Suzanne, Joanne. Just quick reflections of the process. Suzanne, where'd you go?
So sure, I'll say like it was nice to kind of see like the positive approaches emerge, because I think so quickly you want to get like sort of like to the technical problem solving and more of a technician, and so it was really nice to discover like, oh, there's love at the core of this, and there's positive approaches that we can take, you know, to meet all of our sort of needs. So it was nice.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just reiterated for me that I think as human beings want to solve first before we decide what the problem is, and that we're like, oh, this will fix it. We'll just tell them we can't social distance, or I'll get this HBO show and that will fix it, as opposed to like really digging into what the challenge is. And the challenge may not be solvable. Like it may not be solvable that women feel burdened by responsibility and guilt as parents, like as an individual. And it may not be solvable that my in-laws are crazy, but you know, we can come up with some,
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, we come up with some management options.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
And my observation is that for the shift for us is when we got to hear Sarah say, you know, they're all crazy, but they love their grandkids and they love us and we love them. And that to me was like the moment in which the blind people all took their blindfolds off and said, this is what the elephant is. It's about love. So, getting all weepy. All right, so now there's one phase that we're going to talk about left. We're going to do it super fast. So we're going to go to the next section where Shannon is going to talk a little bit about connecting the change. So we've gone to situation change, now connecting it to intended outcomes. She's going to do that super fast. We're going to get right back into our rooms and then just bang out some intended outcomes, just a way to sort of finish this exercise. We're not going to do a complete thing, but at least give us a sense of closure, right? And then if we've got some time, debrief, and then Shannon will close the section out. Any questions about that before I change the thingies and get us into our rooms?
I'm going to do some teaching first.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. I'm just trying to try.
Yes. Not yet. I just moved you guys over to my other screen too. So when you share your screen, JC, I'm ready. Let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're shifting into talking about intended outcomes. And it's a little bit like we've been in a lovely heart space, but now we're moving a little bit to sort of a head and a hand space, thinking about intended outcomes. So next slide, please. We've spent quite a bit of time fleshing out the situation and making sure that we're seeing that context fully and clearly so that we can then move to the C part of scope, which we just completed around really understanding the change that we want to make. And I think we just had two powerful examples of seeing how our change and our intent statement get to a much more core issue or problem that we want to solve, which my experience of both of those examples also is that now we're in the place of creating sustainable change. So we then move to what are the outcomes. So if we've identified what our intent is, just like we do in a meeting design, then we ask ourselves the question around outcomes, which is what are all the component parts or all the things that we need to have or put in place that will create the change that we seek. So next slide. So you've already been building your muscle around outcome-based thinking, and we've been doing that in the context of meetings. This is how we define intended outcomes in the context of a meeting, which is a goal or end state to be achieved as a result of a particular section of a meeting. And in the meeting, we've been really clear, it's not activities and it's not topics. So in thinking about intended outcomes in the context of leading change, the same thinking applies. So our intended outcomes being clear about our intended outcomes helps to make our leadership more strategic and impactful as we're thinking about how do we put the change in place that we seek. Next slide. So this is how we're defining intended outcomes in the context of change. It's the goal or end state to be achieved that must be in place to accomplish our intent. And again, similar to meetings, like we're not in the realm of activity yet, so it's not actions, it's not solutions, and it's not activities. Next slide. So some ideas for thinking about how to generate intended outcomes. This question for me works magic. Either you can ask it of yourself or of the team, but what are all the things that must be in place in order to achieve our intent? And it might take a few rounds of that particular question and making sure that you're asking that of a broad group of stakeholders to get a real complete set of intended outcomes. But I find that prompt question to be incredibly helpful. We want to ensure that they're nouns. So again, they're articulated as things, you know, nouns, people, place, or things. And then we can consider fidelity checking them for completeness. So we can use self-other system, we can use head, heart, hand, and again, making sure that we're involving all of our relevant stakeholders in order to generate a complete set of intended outcomes. Next slide. So I want to show a couple of examples, and Cody, these are going to be familiar, so I pulled a couple of these from our Blue Sky strategy. And I'm going to show you 2 examples and then a third after we do our own work, but just to show you the scale that we can use scope at. So this is for what is now a newsletter, but our intent and this is a shared piece of work that Cody and I work on here in Boise, but our intent was to create a communication vehicle that champions local diversity and inclusion best practices. And in our strategy, we outlined, okay, if that's our intent, and we asked ourselves the question, what are all the things that need to be in place in order for us to achieve that intent? We came up with 6 desired outcomes. So we need to assess and select the most appropriate communication vehicle. We need to have a clearly defined audience. We need compelling content. We need a publication schedule. So again, these are not like activities. We're not saying go, go build a distribution list, right? That would be something we'll do after we've defined who our audience is. That's an activity, but we're anchoring our actions, our first set of actions in intended outcomes. We're articulating our intended outcomes so that we can be assured that we're going to achieve our intent. Next slide. This is also another example from Blue Sky. So again, thinking about a scaling the scope method from a smaller project to a bigger project. So this is what's now a 300-person annual event. Our intent is to create a powerful public experience that illustrates the importance of diversity and inclusion in business. And in order to do that, we have 11 intended outcomes. And these, again, were generated by asking ourselves the question, what are all the things that need to be in place in order to achieve our intent? They anchor the actions that we'll eventually take, but we start by defining the intended outcomes first before we move into action so that we can be assured that when we are taking action, it is aligned and is going to help us actually achieve the change that we seek. So I'm going to just pause and see if there are any questions before we go back to practicing intended outcomes in our group. Any questions? Okay, all right, so JC, I think we're ready to go back in our breakout groups.
10 minutes on the clock, 9 formal minutes, and then a minute buffer. So
Okay.
Just bang out some intended outcomes and we'll be back soon.
Thanks.
Oh, God. All right, folks, let's see where we are. We have well, let's just do this. Let's everybody show their intended outcomes. We've been debriefing all along. I think you get the point. Shannon will offer.
We're at time, aren't we?
We are at time, but I think we've been remiss. You can see everybody's beautiful.
Okay.
Cody Claudette group, will you please quickly just show us your outcomes and just 2 seconds?
Yeah, join us on the document and I'll give a quick, want me to give a quick?
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, so we have 6 for Claudette. She needs the ability to recognize when to ask for help, an inventory of the tools and resources available to her, a clear list of her desires. Every woman needs that, I think. Healthy prioritization of my responsibilities juxtaposed or balanced against her desires. A mindset of grace when she does prioritize what she wants, and alignment with her kids that she's going to do that.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
We're going to quickly go over to Sarah and Suzanne, and I'll go ahead and debrief. We did a self-other system version of this, and we came up with 9. That Juniper has a great birthday, the nuclear family feels safe, for the husband and Sarah to be aligned on how to be unified, and to have set a clear and established and aligned boundaries and a game plan, which I love this, a game plan for when the boundaries with the in-laws get crossed. You always want to have a backup plan. That's the prevention and intervention. See, you guys are doing that. That's awesome. For the other, that both sets of in-laws feel heard and validated, and that they want to be invited to co-create the socially appropriate social distancing set for both sets of in-laws with clearly stated boundaries with intervention strategies, because they're pretty sure that we're going to need some intervention. So this is already a great example of pulling out intervention, prevention out of meetings and into a real world system. Nobody dies. Everyone has a good time. The end.
Yay.
Shannon, take it over.
Okay. Take us over. All right. Yeah, you need to share slides, please. I have to figure out how to move you guys. Okay. All right, Joanne, are you on the slide? This is an example of big global project.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So I'm just gonna show this very quickly and in the interest of time, not talk about it, but this is an example of using scope for a big global project. So the idea was just to continue to demonstrate the scalability of solving problems in this way. Next slide, please. Very, very quick final thoughts on scope. Next slide. The one that says final thoughts. So again, this is a non-linear process, so start where it makes the most sense. Follow the energy of the team. And I think we've experienced today, I know I did personally, that we get energized around each other's problems when we land at a change, when we co-create the situation and then we jointly arrive at the change statement. When that happens, and we can feel that energy, it's a sign that we've engaged head, heart, and hand for the team. So be guided by that when you're having that experience. Then the third thing I would say is that a completed scope document is a strategy document. So think of it that way. It is also, if you are in a position of leadership, it's an excellent tool for delegation because you can align with your team and have confidence in their strategic direction and the impactful nature of their work. Because you've spent so much time up front that you now know that when they get to the plan stage, which we didn't talk about today, that their actions are aligned with a clear and sustainable strategic direction. Next slide. And then the final thing that Joanne and I would like to offer is that when we build the skill of assessing problems through the lens of self-led system and we're engaging the whole person in the context of change scoping, we're significantly increasing our organizational capacity. Our capacity to solve problems, our capacity to perspective take and collaborate, and then ultimately our ability to create strategic and sustainable change. The end.
The end.
Yeah.
Any burning questions at this point? If there are none, want us to make sure because we want to end on time. Shannon, will you go ahead and lead us through our next steps, please?
Oh, yes. So our next steps. So they're at the bottom of our meeting design. We are going to basically repeat what we did today, but practicing with your buddy in your buddy meetings with one sort of pre-request, which is pick a work situation. So we practice on personal problems for a reason. It's easier sometimes to address than to start like diving right into a work situation. So pick a work situation, something that's up for you that you'd like to spend some time on. Do your own pre-work in terms of generating the context for the situation in your scope template, and bring a beginning of that to your buddy meeting. And then in your buddy meeting, you have some directions and you've now had the experience of facilitating each other through the scope process. So those are the high level next steps. There's a link to the scope template in step 2 of our meeting design, so you can make a copy of that and use it as many times as you like. And then there's the third thing is just a clip to an excerpt from Moneyball, which JC loves, and
Got Brad Pitt in it.
is got Brad Pitt, so it's all good. And it's relevant to our conversation around problems.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very well done. And we're back on time. Let us, with the last few minutes that we have left, go ahead and check out. We, again, are going to be modeling different processes. So a little silent reflection, probably not 2 minutes, more like, or probably not 3 minutes, more like 2 minutes. What's one thing you're taking away from this session? And what's one thing you commit to practicing? And probably just look up so I can see that you're ready to go. And then we'll report out. One thing I'm committed to practicing, one thing I'm taking away.
I can start. One thing I'm.
Hang on.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I did it wrong.
Give him a chance to.
Sorry. No, silent.
Silent.
Oh, I didn't get it either. I didn't know it was silent.
Reflection for, I mean, silent thinking and jotting, and then look up.
Okay.
Sorry,
Got
that
it.
was my poor facilitation of that process. All right. Sarah, since you jumped the gun before, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. So taking away an appreciation for solving problems. Yeah, there's a group. It was enlightening and fun and heartfelt, and I really enjoyed it. And then I'm going to commit to practicing compassion for myself and for others.
Thank you. Lovely, Sarah. Who would like to go next?
I can go.
Thank you, Sarah.
One thing I'm taking away is that this methodology can be used on something that might seem silly or a really big sticky problem. So to really use it and leverage it. And then one thing I'm committing to is to use this methodology this week.
Awesome.
Next week, maybe. Well, I know we have to do that for the buddy process anyways, but beyond that, like use it.
Great. Suzanne, since you're already off mute, you want to?
Sure. So I guess what I'm taking away is sort of at the top of this meeting today, like not being afraid to name problems. I think we as an organization use opportunities versus problems. There's a fear of naming them. So I'm going to do that more. And then I'm committing to practice the scope approach, especially the intended outcomes. Like I don't do that enough, and that's really helpful, especially with the self-other system approach as a tool within that. So.
Cool. Thank you, Suzanne. Claudette.
So what I'm taking away is a good process for not jumping straight to the solution and working through identifying the actual problem, like the actual problem. And I commit to using this as a muscle, like something that I can use a lot in different areas of my life.
Awesome. Thank you, Claudette. Jan?
I am taking away what I will describe as the power of the pause. Like when we ask a question and then just sit and wait and hold space, what can happen? And I, as an extrovert, have a tendency to ask a question and then begin to answer my own question. So I commit to actually practicing the power of the pause a bit more.
Excellent. Thank you, Jan.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm taking away from the session, these first scopes are always so profound, and what's so interesting about it is that they get seared in my brain forever. Those of you from CO, we did a problem for Will, and I will never forget that problem that we sat and we did for Will. So it's amazing how it like makes it concretizes it. The one thing I commit to practicing, probably just to scope more. I talk about it more than I do it, so I'm committed to practicing scope in general and committed to supporting all of you. So with that, we are complete. Good session, guys.
Great job, everybody.
Have a great buddy session.
Yeah.
Please reach out to Shannon and I. We want to support you, help you be awesome and powerful, impactful women. And with that,
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good week. Bye.